My father owned an estate in Nottinghamshire, England, and I was the third of his 5 sons. After studying medicine for 3 years at Cambridge, I joined Mr. James Bates, a well-known surgeon in London, to train as a doctor. I wanted to travel. So after my training, I became a surgeon on a ship. For 3.5 years, I traveled all over the world. When I returned to England, I got married and settled down for some time. However, I longed for a life on the sea and once again became a surgeon on another ship. I made several voyages over the next 6 years to the East and West Indies. However, amongst them, one of my most memorable voyages was to the South Seas, which began on May 4, 1699. The journey started off well. We traveled happily for nearly 6 months. However, when we were near the coast of Sumatra, a violent storm struck us and we ended up being driven through the seas for days. During this time, 12 of our crewmen died and many others became ill. On 5th of November, our ship hit a rock and split into 2. Only 6 of the crew, of whom I was one, were able to escape on a boat. We managed to row for about 3 miles when suddenly a giant wave swept away all of my companions. I was the only one who fortunately managed to swim to the shore of an island. But on the shore, I could see no sign of life, no houses or people. I was extremely exhausted, so I lied down on the grass and soon was fast asleep. When I finally woke up, the next morning, I could not move even when I tried. My arms and legs were tightly tied down to the ground. Even my hair, which was long and thick, was tied down with tiny strings. I could not even turn my head. I could only stare at the sun, which was growing hotter by the minute. I heard noises around me, but I could see nothing. After a short while, I felt something moving up my left leg, then to my chest, and then almost up to my chin. I looked at it anxiously, only to find that it was a tiny human-like creature, less than 6 inches tall, marching up with a bow and arrow in his hands. To add to my astonishment, I felt at least 40 more such tiny men following the first. I shouted so loudly in surprise and fright that all the little men got scared and ran away. Many got hurt while trying to jump off my chest and onto the ground. However, after a little while, they came back again. This time, one of them dared to come so near so that he could look into my face. He studied me with amazement and then lifted his hands and eyes in admiration. He then shouted something to his friends, but I could not understand their language. Just then, in my fright, I tried to move and ended up breaking a few strings and pulled my hand free. I tried to catch hold of a few of them, but they all ran away for the second time. Just then, in an instant, 100 or so tiny arrows hit my left hand. They pricked me like tiny needles. Another shower of arrows were shot all over my body as well. Those that hit my face hurt a lot, so I thought it was wiser to lay still. I planned to match their great army when I freed myself at night. When they saw I was still, they stopped shooting arrows. However, I could sense from the noise that their numbers were increasing. When I turned my head just a little, I could see hundreds of them building a stage about 1.5 feet high next to me. They worked swiftly and efficiently. When the stage was fully constructed, a well-dressed man, who seemed to be an important officer, climbed on top with 3 other men. He gave a long speech in my ear, which seemed like a mixture of threats and promises, although I could not understand a single word they said. In reply, however, in a very humble manner, I pointed a finger at my mouth repeatedly to show that I wanted food. The Hergo, I learnt later that was what the officer was called, understood me very well. He quickly went down the stage and said something to his fellows. Soon, several ladders were put upon my sides. About 100 inhabitants started climbing up and walking towards my mouth. They brought with them hundreds of baskets laden with meat and vegetables. They were like human food, but much smaller in size. I ate 2 to 3 baskets of mutton legs at a time and 3 loaves of bread, along with it. They brought me many barrels of water, each about half a pint in size. The tiny creatures exclaimed in wonder at my appetite and danced upon my chest with joy because I ate their food. At that point, I could have easily caught hold of 40 or 50 of them and throw them on the ground. But I felt like I was now their guest, since I ate their food and drank their water. I also admired their courage to come so close to me. Soon, a person of high rank once again came up to my chest and read something from a paper which was smaller than my thumbnail. I found out later that it was an order from their king that I should be moved to the capital city. I made signs with my free hand, pleading for my freedom, but he just shook his head and told me through signs that I must be taken as a prisoner. He then left, and the others started applying some form of ointment in the places where their arrows had hit me. In a few minutes, all the pain was gone, and I began to feel sleepy. I suspected that they must have mixed some medicine in my water. They then loosened my bonds and began carrying me away. And just like that, I, Lemuel Gulliver, was fast asleep in a strange land called Lilliput, the land of little men.